Hey guys, welcome to an interesting video on Wild Rift. So today we are back with an Ezreal updated complete guide. Now we haven't done Ezreal in a hot minute, but here we have his updated guide and not a lot has changed. But before we get into it, of course don't forget to check out the basic guide I put up in the cards above for his skills, living order tips and tricks, as well as a couple of combos. But with that said, now let's get into the build itself. So you will see Ezreal's build still pretty much remains the same. You still want to be going for the core items of a Gluttonous Greaves Rush for that early game laning power, into going for Manamune and Triforce. Now there is a debate with Manamune and Triforce as to whether you want to rush the Manamune straight up, or you want to go into Tier and then Sheen and then finish Manamune and then finish Triforce. Now personally that is the way that I build Ezreal, at least if I have the goal for a Sheen in the laning phase. However, some people do like to rush the Manamune first, because obviously Manamune did get buffed way back when, and now stacks 15 per ability or per auto attack instead of charging 10. So rushing the Manamune first would mean that you are able to stack up your Manamune more quickly. Whereas if you go for a 800 gold Sheen, you will complete the Manamune a little bit later and as a result charge it a little bit less quickly. I still like to go for the Sheen in the laning phase because I do think that the Sheen, the spell bait that you get from the Sheen is very useful for laning and helps you out a lot, right? So that's just me, right? So after your two core items, the rest of the build is kind of flexible, right? If you take a look at the top players, you have a lot of strange builds, like you have Wit's End over here, you have Terminus, things like that. So it's kind of flexible, but generally the most common two next items that you want to go on Ezreal generally is Riftmaker as well as Blade of the Rune King. Now why? Well, Riftmaker gives you a generally good stat line. It gives you Omnivamp, which is very helpful, but most importantly, it gives you the Void Corruption True Damage passive. Now, in the mid to late game skirmishes and teamfights, Ezreal is the kind of champion that wants to stay far behind in the backline, launch pot shots with his Q, and basically just poke down the enemy team. So it's very easy for him to stack up his Riftmaker and then just start blasting away from distance, so the true damage is going to come in very handy. And similarly, Blade of the Rune King does allow you to do % current health damage on hit. Now, Ezreal is by no means a tank shredding kind of champion. However, this does proc on his Q because his Q procs on hit effects, which basically means that your Q is going to be doing more damage just in general against basically, everybody, right? Even squishy champions have health, right? So you're going to get that health scaling on your Q, and of course to deal with the tanks is going to be a little bit better as well. Aside from that, you also get attack speed and attack damage, and Ezreal does auto-attack a decent amount even though he's generally a spell-casting ADC. That's kind of one aspect of Ezreal that a lot of people kind of underestimate, which is he still does a lot of auto-attack damage, especially when his passive is stacked. Then you again get more Vamp and you get the Drain passive, all kind of just very handy. So last item we want to go for an armor penetration item. So as a default here, I've actually put Serra's Grudge. Now, if you have no kind of better thing to build, generally you want to build Serralda's Grudge because this gives you the slow, and this is very helpful against tanks or bruisers who want to run you down because the slow is going to kind of prevent them from chasing you and it's going to come in very handy. However, if you need it, you can go for Mole Reminder for the anti-heal component, or you can also go for Terminus, which of course gives you the on-hit damage, which is going to proc on your Q once again, as well as the stacking resistances and stacking penetrations. So you could also go for this one. So for the runes, you really have two big options, right? I'm going to talk a little bit more about this one in the gameplay, but it's PTA slash Empowerment, which I have here, and it's Conqueror. Now, both of these are really good options. Looking at the top few players, you can see we have a mix of Conqueror and Empowerment. Now, this is really more of what kind of playstyle you prefer to play Ezreal with. Now, I prefer to play more aggressive in the early game, so I think Empowerment is better suited to my playstyle. I still think Conqueror is very solid. As you can see, Ezreal players are normally split down the middle as to who wants to go for PTA and who wants to go for Conqueror. Both are very viable. Now, Brutal because it procs on your Q, Giant Slayer to deal with the tanks, and Alacrity here because, as I said, Ezreal actually auto-attacks a lot and is, a really good auto-attacker when he stacks up his passive. We have Bone Plating, of course, with the defensive capabilities, as well as the spells, Flash, and normally with Ezreal, you're going to go for Cleanse because you don't need Ghost, and most of the time, Ezreal, you just want to cleanse CC away and then just jump away to safety. However, of course, you can also go for Barrier or Exhaust if the situation calls for it. With all that said though, now let's hop into our gameplay. Okay, so now let's hop into the gameplay itself. But before we do, don't forget to, of course, like, comment, and subscribe. Any questions, queries, or remarks, feel free to leave them in the comments below. Of course, I'll be sure to address them. or drop a like. So the first thing I kind of wanted to talk about is why Ezreal is such a good pick. Ezreal, I think, is a very decent spot, in a very decent spot right now. I ranked him in the S tier. I do think Ezreal has some glaring weaknesses, which we all really know about, which is that he's not really the strongest carry champion unless you are insanely far ahead, and he has trash wave clear, probably the worst wave clear among any ADC. Only kind of ADC that's kind of close to him in terms of trash wave clear is Vayne, but even Vayne, as you saw from my guide that I posted a couple of days ago, Vayne now goes for items like Minion Blaster, which helps her wave clear, whereas Ezreal does not. So Ezreal, probably the worst wave clear ADC, at the moment, right? So you might have rare instances where the enemy team is trying to push for a win and you're the only champion left alive. The only thing you can do is to ult the wave if you still have ult, and sometimes just because you're Ezreal, you cannot clear a wave and the enemy team, kind of wins the game. Whereas if you were, let's say, a Jhin, you just launch all your spells on the wave, clear the wave, and the enemy team cannot, end the game. Alright, so that is some of Ezreal's weaknesses, but of course Ezreal, the main strength of Ezreal is really the fact that Ezreal can be played in or against any team comp. I wouldn't say Ezreal has any horrible matchups when it comes to support or ADC like that he faces, and he can pair with basically any kind of support. He can pair with engagers who can lock people down so he can hit his spells. He can pair with enchanters, although Ezreal is not really the kind of champion where you want to buff him with a Lulu or a Yuumi. So normally he just helps the Lulu or Yuumi get through laning phase, and Lulu or Yuumi can go ahead and, of course, go and buff someone else in the later stages of the game. So with all that said, let's talk about the PTA versus Conqueror discussion. So as you guys just saw here, as I was kind of talking about the strengths and weaknesses of Ezreal, we saw me get a very aggressive early game kill onto the Jhin. And this is the way I like to play Ezreal. I like to play Ezreal a little bit more aggressive, especially if I'm with a mage or a poke champion. So some of Ezreal's strongest support pairings are with champions that can poke. So think about champions like Karma, especially with Senna, he does really well as well. And of course here we have a Zyra who also does really decent poke and can also lock people down at the same time. So Ezreal with a double poke lane is really the most potent way to kind of play Ezreal. So in this particular case we had a Zyra, and also it suits my playstyle, playing a little bit more aggressively in the early game. So I like to go for PTA, and what PTA kind of allows you to do is it allows you to really get into like short trades and all-ins in the early game and benefit from your PTA, right? Because with Conqueror, yes, in like all-ins, you can stack your Conqueror to 6 stacks, but think about how Ezreal can stack Conqueror, right? You have your auto attacks, you have your Q, and you have your E, right? So assuming you start the fight with QE, that's 2 Conqueror stacks, and then you auto, right? That's going to be another stack, as here Zyra catches out the Jhin, and we full combo him, including the ultimate to once again kill him. Once again playing to our early game, right? So that's going to give you 3 stacks of Conqueror, right? Let's say your Q comes back up, you Q him again, you auto him again, you're going to have to auto him another time to stack Conqueror. So you guys get the general idea, which is that Conqueror takes an insanely long time to actually stack, right? So here, I notice that I'm a little bit off of by 800 gold. So I actually undo my longsword buy, and I actually buy the Sheen. So once again, Sheen very useful for the early game, and once again ties into the PTA aggressive early game playstyle. So Conqueror is really hard to stack, so unless you really get into a real like all-in the laning phase, you're not really going to use Conqueror very much in the laning phase, right? You're not going to be able to fully stack it. In the mid to late game team fights, though, the story is completely different, right? In the mid to late game team fights, Conqueror is a way better rune to have than press the attack, because Conqueror, of course, is very easy to stack in team fights. You can easily just launch your shots at people and then slowly stack up Conqueror before you really go in. So as a result, Conqueror is going to be way better in the later stages of the game. But in the laning phase, Conqueror is not very useful at all, and that's where Press the Attack comes in. So with Press the Attack, as I mentioned, you can take very good early game fights in terms of, like I said, short trade, just like auto Q auto to prop the PTA for a short trade, or you can even take a longer fight where you proc the PTA and then you continue on attacking, and the extra 8% damage is going to put in a lot of work and allow you to basically get a very positive trade. Of course, assuming the enemy team doesn't have something that they would be able to out trade you with, like for example Zeri with a Conqueror can stack up really fast and might be able to get a better trade on you in the long run compared to you with the Press the Attack. But yeah, you guys get the general idea. You can already see we've killed Jhin twice with this basic concept. you know, of taking a little bit of a longer trade into an all-in, and then we just take him out. And also, you will notice that Zyra, this is a solo queue game, right? So I'm not duo queue with my support or anybody else in this game. So Zyra has pretty much ditched me ever since she got me 2 kills, and she's now roaming, which is actually fine, right? Because this is something that you don't see a lot of solo queue supports do, but Zyra has basically gotten me 2 kills already, right? She's basically trapped the Jhin twice, allowing me to land all my spells on him and kill him twice. So now I have a 2 kill lead onto the Jhin, right? So now Zyra is thinking that she probably wants to go and help some other people, you know, on the map that's not just me. So she's roaming, and Jhin here is trying to get the Skull Crab, but I'm just free hitting him in the meanwhile. Now, unfortunately, Garen shows up here to zone me off, and Senna also commits the ult to give him the shield, so I can't really commit to the kill on Jhin. I try to ult him down, but obviously it's not going to be enough damage. I do hit though and kind of chase him away off the dragon, which then allows me and Zyra to come and contest dragon against Garen. Of course, Garen is their jungler, by the way, so he smites it and secures it, but we were just trying to see what we can get done here. Just maybe land a little bit of free poke. Amumu is now coming in from the other side. We realize this, so we're going in as well. Curse of the Sad Mommy comes through. Garen eventually does die. Yone, who is 4-0-1 by the way at the moment, is now going in, so we're gonna have to kind of back off a little bit. Vladimir has been hardcore feeding the Yone, with Yone having 4 kills and Vladimir having 4 deaths, which is obviously not ideal in the slightest. Now Jhin is knocking on our tower, so we're gonna have to hit up to stop him. But back to my original point, right? So Zyra's got me 2 kills, and she thinks that probably it's better to help mid lane or top lane get a hit, which is not exactly a wrong concept. So she kind of ditches me completely and leaves me alone in lane. So this concept is not correct. I mean, it's not wrong. However, it could be risky depending on the ADC you're playing, right? So if you're playing with an ADC, like for example, a Jinx, right, or a champion that has very low mobility, and has not very good wave clear, like a Jinx, like a Vayne, you know, these kind of champions, it's really hard to kind of ditch them and go to other lanes to help, because if you do that, they can very easily get dived under tower, especially if the enemy team has an engaged support. Even with this Senna Jhin, right, if they play it correctly, they can dive an immobile champion. But Ezreal does have mobility, so you can kind of leave him alone. Here, the Amumu as well as the Zyra come in for a gank, and this allows me to flash forward, get the kill onto Senna, giving her the first death of the game, and Jhin gets chased away by Amumu, so it kind of just works out at the end of the day, right? So there are some ADCs you can leave alone because they have mobility or because they have good wave clear. So for example, mobility champions are like Ezreal or Zeri, and champions who have good wave clear are champions like Varus, Kai'Sa. These are the kind of champions you can kind of leave alone in their lane, and they can survive if they play properly 1v2, and they kind of stay out of the enemy's ranges and just clear wave. Of course, they're not going to be getting any kills 1v2 unless the enemy team messes it up. However, you know, you can't afford to kind of ditch them, and they're not going to be completely destroyed like how a Jinx will be. Like, even if you have like a 3-kill Jinx, right, she probably dies under tower 1v2 majority of the time. So yeah. So here, Jhin is found on the back end of the fight trying to deal damage, but he can't do that because we can simply turn around and send him back into the gray screen once again, right? Because we're so far ahead, he cannot afford to really deal with us. And you can see here that we already have our Mana Moon evolved into Mirror Mana before we even really built our Triforce, right? So we're definitely in a very strong spot right now. And having the Mana Moon buff was a huge buff to Ezreal, because obviously Ezreal is already like the fastest Mana Moon charger, right? Out of all champions who built Mana Moon, it's really actually only it's only Ezreal and Corki who builds Mana Moon nowadays. Last time, Varus and Misfortune used to build Mana Moon as well, but they don't really build that anymore. So obviously Ezreal charges faster than Corki, and even compared to, like, you know, the Varus and the MF, Ezreal is the fastest Mana Moon charger out of all the ADCs, right? I mean, I'm not sure about who else builds Mana Moon other than ADCs. Maybe Jace. I'm not too sure about how fast Jace charges Mana Moon, but what I can tell you is that out of the ADCs, Varus definitely charges the fastest. So here, we're going in for a gank onto Rumble. Rumble is basically 1v3. Obviously, he's gonna just die. I believe Darius there picks up the kill. And yeah. So by the way, guys, you can see, taking a look at the game state right now, Darius has a really good lead against the Rumble. Same can be said for myself, as I snipe out the Yone that got caught by my team for another kill. Obviously, I'm doing very well against the Jhin. You can see Zyra actually has less gold than Senna simply because Zyra has been roaming, right? So one of the downsides of roaming is that you lose out on a lot of gold and XP because you're wasting a lot of time walking around, right? So Zyra a little bit lower on gold, and Amumu is slightly ahead of the Garen, but really the only huge deficit we have on our team is Vladimir, who's like a 2k gold behind the Yone, and of course Yone is a very scary champion to deal with, regardless of which ADC you're playing, right? So here, Rumble's trying to roast me alive. I'm trying to get out of there. Rumble is going in deep. We almost get the kill on him now. Garen is coming on me, spinning on me. I'm trying to escape. I flash and cleanse out. But Garen flashes over, executes me with his ultimate, and I end up giving over a shutdown to the Garen. Jhin, again, I'm not sure what he's doing. He is just getting destroyed once again. But yeah, a little bit of an unfortunate death, that one giving Garen the shutdown and such. But yeah, the Yone is really the main scary one that I'm looking at. We have a 0 and 6 Vladimir. Oh, by the way, guys, yeah, just look at the Vladimir. He's kind of just hardcore inting here. He's 0 and 7 now. But by the way, guys, I just want to kind of point out that how badly this Vladimir is inting. Like, I've been watching him play, right? And he's walking in really strange locations. He's going in even though he's 0 and 7. He's going in on the Yone, who's 2k plus goal ahead of him, who he's been dying to the entire game. Like, you would think that when you're dying on repeat to the same person, you're not going to be repeatedly going in on that person, right? Because they're just going to kill you again and again and again. Right? Like, that's kind of just common sense, right? But no, he just goes in again and again and again. However, what's even more messed up than my Vladimir lacking a little bit of common sense is that he wasn't even wrong, because when you get to the later part in the game, a little bit of a spoiler, but he just ends up killing all of them on repeat somehow. But I have no idea how. I guess Vladimir is just broken. So here Yone is really overextended. We're all just trying to catch him. However, Rumble actually comes in with the red carpet to dissuade us from walking forward. That was a really well-placed Rumble out, by the way. Completely cut off the choke point and prevented us from chasing the Yone. So in terms of saving the Yone, that was amazing. Of course, in terms of actually doing damage, that didn't quite happen. But to play Rumble against this team comp is really difficult. Because he doesn't have anybody to lock down the enemy team for him. He doesn't have like a Jarvan or Amumu to kind of just like mass CC the enemy team. So he's going to have a little bit of a tough time. So here the enemy team is chasing into the Amumu. Amumu is really low HP, getting run down by the Garen. Now he CCs the Garen, so I can just hit the Garen for free. Garen now realizes he's in trouble, starts running for the hills. The 0-7 Vladimir is now chasing the Garen together with me. Now, I think Garen's a little bit too fast with the Youmuu's proc there, so I'm giving up the chase and I'm going to simply go ahead and do the Baron. And here, Vladimir gets his first kill of the game after chasing down the Garen all the way almost to the tier 2 tower. In the meanwhile, me, Darius, and Amumu are picking up a free Baron, making use of our slight lead to, of course, secure this Baron. And of course, this will probably lead to the lead getting even bigger, because with the Baron, we probably can crack a couple of tier 2s, if not even inhibs, right? So here, I'm going to go ahead and push top, which is the lane that's the most pushed in here. My team is getting into kind of like a fight in mid. I'm launching my ulti to try to help out. This ulti actually hits like 2 people, and Yone actually gets pretty low from the ulti. Now, I'm rotating to help out my team, in case we get into a fight here. Zyra checking the bush with her plants. Nobody home. And Ren is going to clear wave and try to push in. Now, of course, Darius dying here loses us a lot of tempo, because now we're at 4v5 with the Baron. And obviously, you don't want to be losing members when you got Baron, because you want to be using all your manpower to push, right? So here, Vladimir is getting roasted once again by the Rumble. He goes in with the Proto Belt, procs his phase rush, ultis nobody, by the way, but eventually does get the kill onto Yone. And now I'm trying to finish off the Rumble, and Vladimir gets another kill. So Vladimir gets kills in rapid succession and suddenly is doing damage after getting 2 items. So this is kind of just what I don't get, right, as I complete my Riftmaker. Like, how can you be feeding hardcore as a Vladimir and then suddenly you hit 2 items and suddenly you're just one-shotting people? It doesn't make sense. Like, how broken is Vladimir? But anyway, now we're going back to the mid lane, back to the pushing, and only Garen and Senna there are defending. Of course, we had the 2 deaths previously onto the Rumble as well as the Yone, so they're not having a good time. Even Yone, who's like fed, is now like has been dying quite a little bit from the fighting, because I mean, obviously on my team everybody is a hit other than Vladimir, and now Vladimir, even he's catching up, so the situation is getting more and more dire for the enemy team. So we're trying to use Vladimir as bait here. Me and Zyra are kind of just hiding here. Vladimir does bait pretty successfully, if I do say so myself. I'm gonna have to snipe out the Garen here, which I am able to do. Long range. This match I do have quite a number of nice snipes, right? Onto the Yone just now and onto the Garen. Now, not the longest cross-map snipes, but really important to secure kills that otherwise would have been lost. So here, I was trying to force this tower a little bit. I get a little bit caught out, so I realized that I'm in a little bit of trouble, so I'm going to have to quickly cleanse and then Arcane Shift out of the way back to safety. And then, after which, I can now grab some fruit. Now, I don't really have a lot of gold to buy anything very valuable. I can get some item components for Bork, but I didn't really think that was too important to base for, so I'd rather just take some fruit and continue to stay out on the map, especially with the dragon coming up. Now, here, dragon is not very important, right? Because this is not sold for either team. But Baron is not up, so we can't do the Baron sneak with the dragon distraction, so we're just going to do the dragon. Regardless, Yone on the opposite side of the map, so the most fed member is not even here. Dragon secured by my team, and Amumu goes in, flash ultis onto the Garen, who I'm not really sure is that valuable of a target that you want to flash out the Garen, but we do take out the Garen out of the equation. Darius gets the 1v1 kill onto the Yone, so now we're 5v3 at the moment with Baron spawning in just a little bit. I'm actually pinging for the Baron because I'm thinking that, when the moment that Baron comes up, we can just do it, right? But Amumu not really in position is kind of the issue. So I'm still pinging for the Baron because there's still 20 plus seconds until until the jungle and Yone are coming up. So Amumu is finally coming toward the Baron. We're gonna just start it out as Amumu is now hopping over the wall. Senna has caught wind of it, and she is coming to check. Darius though is just running at her face and forcing her to get zoned off. Here, but look at that, by the way. I Arcane shifted out the way of the polymorph of Baron, and Baron just polymorphed me anyway, so yeah, I guess Baron has a number of those things to shoot at, and there's not enough targets, so he targets me twice. But yeah, that's messed up. But anyway, now with the second Baron, hopefully we can crack some inhibs. First Baron did allow us to get like 2 tier 2s, I believe, but now hopefully we can get some inhibs. Getting some inhibs would be very nice, creates a lot of map pressure for our team. And here Yone is I'm not sure why he's committing onto a Amumu who's like full tank. And yeah, he's full tank and 3 armor items, by the way. Yone is just going ham, going in on him. That ain't the way to go, my man. Anyways, here we're just, using our range to just push in. We do have a rundown going on of the Darius. I'm trying to help him out with the ulti. I do manage to get a chunk onto the Rumble, and with his own ulti, he's able to one-shot him. And we're able to actually successfully help Darius to survive. And in addition, now we're in position to go for this top lane tower. So I'm just going to get rid of this tower first and continue pushing on in. Minion waves are pushing in on all 3 lanes. Enemy team's in trouble. Now here I would have one-shot that Jin if he didn't flash away, by the way. Like, he just got nearly one-shot by my combo. Garen and Senna now running toward me. I'm just backing off a little bit. Minions are taking the tower automatically on the bot side, by the way. So here we're just taking pot shots at the enemy team. Huge Vladimir engage into my ulti. Huge damage onto everybody. Vladimir gets another kill. And at this point, it looks like the game is kind of won. We have 3 people dead on the enemy team. Both mid laner and ADC. The 2 carries are dead. We get Elder Dragon. And now we're kind of just playing for kills, right? So only 2 people are left. I'm going to Arcane Shift out the way of being roasted by a Rumble. We kill Rumble. Only Senna is left. The game is basically won here with super minion waves coming in on multiple lanes. And now we're just trying to get the last kill on Senna before the game's over. There we go. And now we can just end the game. So, hopefully you guys enjoyed that gameplay. I'm going to leave you guys with the stats as usual. Thank you guys so much for watching, and goodbye.